Hey guys, would it be possible if we did a colorless goblin noise?
Shut up, Jerry.
Hey gang, using the promo code MTGMudsta, all caps, will get you 10% off any order over $10 at Flipside Gaming. It'll also get you 10% off any orders of singles at Multizone. And it'll get you 10% off most products at Original Magic Art, with the exceptions of some paintings. If these fine sites don't have what you're looking for, you can also consider using my affiliate link when ordering from TCG Player. And if you'd like to join the generic Goblin Gang to support this channel, there's a link to my Patreon in the description below. Today's game features the Jersey Boys, and it was filmed by Trevor, featuring some of the original people that I met when I moved to New Jersey. We've got Mike playing his Brudiclad deck, keeping an island, 2 mountains, Jalira, Fabricate, and Soul Ring. Trevor's playing his Zurgo deck, keeping an Indomitable Archangel, Sword of Fire and Ice, Rugged Prairie, Orzhov Signet, Archangel Avacyn, Wrath of God, and Temple of Triumph. Matt is playing his Scion deck, keeping Steam Vents, Temple Garden, Bloodstained Mire, Swamp, Sarkhan Fireblood, Kadama's Reach, and Heroic Intervention. Sean is back, and to celebrate, has built Chorus of the Conclave. He keeps Beast Within, Forest, Savannah, Longshot Squad, Tuskguard Captain, Cultivate, and a Plains. Trevor wins the die roll and starts us off. Trevor plays a Temple of Triumph, scrying 1 and bottoming it. Mike plays a Shivan Reef, casting the fabled turn 1 Soul Ring and passing. Sean plays a Savannah to flex and passes. Matt plays a Bloodstained Mire, taking 1 to find a land, and passes while searching. Trevor drops an Expedition Rugged Prairie, and casts Orzhov Signet. Mike plays an island, and casts Fabricate. He passes while searching. Sean plays a Plains, and passes. Matt finds the On-Color Blood Crypt, and Mike reveals a trading post from their searches. Matt plays a Tap Steam Vents and passes. Trevor casts a Sword of Fire and Ice before playing his Tap Smoldering Marsh and passing to Mike. Mike plays a Mountain and brings a Jalira in his main phase. Sean plays a Forest and casts Cultivate. He finds a Forest for the field and a Plains to his hand. Matt plays an untapped Temple Garden, taking 2, and this lets him cast Kadama's Reach, and he goes to find a basic for the field and for his hand as he passes. Trevor plays a Plains and casts Trailblazer's Boots, and then the newly printed Sword of Sinew and Steel. Mike plays an island and pays 4 mana for Trading Post. Heading to combat, Jalira hits Matt and Mike passes. Sean pays 4 in his main phase for a Beast Whisperer, and he plays a Plains and passes. Matt plays a Forest and pays 3 for Sarkhan Fireblood. He upticks the Walker, discarding a card and drawing 1 before passing. Trevor has a Shambling Vents come in tapped, and he passes. At the end of turn, Mike makes a Goat with Trading Post, losing 1 life. Mike plays an Exotic Orchard and casts Gilded Lotus. Sean casts a Farhaven Elf and draws as he casts it before finding a basic. Sean then hits Sarkhan with the Beast Whisperer and passes. Matt plays a Swamp and upticks his Walker to make some mana, using it to cast his commander, Scion of the Ur-Dragon. He then passes, and at the end of turn, Trevor flashes in Archangel Avacyn. Trevor plays a Fetid Heath for his land for turn, and then an Indomitable Archangel, sticking hard with the Angel subtheme. Matt's none too keen on any of this though, especially with those boots which pretty much read protection from Matt. With the Archangel still in the stack, Matt uses Anguished Unmaking to exile Avacyn and loses 3 life, which is a huge flavor win. The Archangel then comes in, and Trevor puts the Sword of Sinew and Steel to them. Trevor then passes, and Mike activates Jalira, basically polymorphing his Goat token. He reveals until he hits an Inferno Titan, and it comes in, and it has an Enter the Battlefield trigger. Mike puts all 3 points of damage from the Titan entering onto the Beast Whisperer, and before passing to his own turn, Mike then pays 1 more life to Trading Post to make another Goat. Mike plays a Ghost Quarter and heads to combat. He swings the Inferno Titan at Sean and deals 3 to Sarkin with the Titan on attack trigger. Sean chooses not to block and takes the 6. Sean casts a Sigil of the New Dawn in his main phase before passing to Matt. Matt makes a bold statement with Mirari's Wake in his main phase, and sadly we learn that Matt's Gishath deck has gone the way of the dinosaurs, i.e. extinction. He then passes. Trevor moves his Sword of Fire and Ice onto the Archangel this time, and then plays his Dragonskull Summit. He passes through combat, and in his second main phase, brings out Zurgo. Trevor passes, and at the end of turn, Mike polymorphs again with Jalira, going into his library until he hits a combat celebrant. Yikes. He also makes another goat and loses a life thanks to the trading post. Mike plays a mountain, and this time literally casts polymorph on his goat token. He reveals until he hits Angrath's Marauders, which seems pretty decent now that he has basically 2 combat steps if he wants. Mike now has a hard choice of deciding who to attack, and none of the options are pretty great. He swings only the Inferno Titan at Sean, putting one of the Inferno Titan damage triggers on Zurgo, which is doubled, and 2 of them on Scion, which are also doubled, but only Zurgo dies because Mike forgot that Mirari's Wake pumps the Scion by +1/+1. Sean then blocks the Farhaven Elf, and pays the 2 to the Sigil when it dies to return it to his hand. Sean recasts the Farhaven Elf before finding a basic Plains, and has to discard down to 7 as he passes to Matt. At the end of turn, Matt activates the Scion to find and put to graveyard Lathlis. Matt's turn has him casting Lightning Greaves and moving them onto his commander. He then activates his Scion twice, finding 2 dragons, one after another, and binning Skithiryx and then a Hellkite Charger, with the Scion remaining as the Charger. This sets him up beautifully for a Patriarch's bidding, and Matt names dragons. Sean names druids, and Trevor names disappointment, and with the spell in the stack, Mike polymorphs his Titan, hitting a Pathrazer of Ulamog. Mike then names giants to bring back the Inferno Titan as the bidding resolves, and we then resolves Mike's Titan trigger, which has him putting all 3 points of damage, which is doubled, onto the Hellkite Charger. Sean puts a +1/+1 counter on his Beast Whisperer from the Pollenbright Druid entering, and Matt gains 3 dragon tokens from Lathlis seeing his dragons all entering. Matt then heads to combat, dealing 7 commander damage to Mike with Scion, who's still a copy of the Charger. Trevor plays a Rogue's Passage and heads to combat. He goes at Mike with the Archangel, dealing 8. He then deals 2 damage to Mike with the first half of Sword of Fire and Ice and draws a card, and then blows up Trading Post with the Sword of Sinew and Steel trigger. With the target on the stack though, Mike makes one last goat and loses 1 life. In his second main phase, Trevor then uses Wrath of God to wipe away all the problematic creatures. Sean pays the 2 and puts Beast Whisperer back to his hand thanks to the Sigil trigger as it dies. Mike plays a tap Steam Vents and brings up Brudiclad in his main phase. He heads to combat and makes a 2/1 mirror token which has nothing to be made into a copy of, and he decides to hit Trevor for 2. Sean draws, and Mike demands Sean cleans up his board state. He does so, and brings back the Beast Whisperer again, before dropping in Experiment 1 and drawing from the Whisperer trigger. Sean then plays a Plains and passes. Matt plays an Overgrown Tomb, taking 2, and plays out a Hellkite Overlord. The Overlord then gets the Greaves, and it heads to combat. Matt swings the dragon at Trevor for 9 damage, and passes. At the end of turn, Trevor casts Utter End and targets the Mirari's Wake, but Matt saves it with a heroic intervention. Trevor animates Shambling Vents in his main phase and gears it up with the swords. He swings it at Matt, dealing 6, gaining 6, and gaining triggers from his swords. He draws a card and deals 2 to the Mirror token, and then using the Sword of Sinew and Steel, blows up Brudiclad for the artifact. Mike recasts his commander in his main phase, and heading to combat, makes a token again. He swings it at Trevor for 2, and passes to Sean. Scion brings out a Good Fortune Unicorn in his main phase, drawing from the Whisperer trigger, and then playing a Forest. He then brings out Shahili, which evolves the Experiment 1 and puts a +1/+1 counter on it from the Unicorn triggering, and also gets to put a +1/+1 counter on Shahili from the Unicorn trigger. With nothing else, Scion passes. Matt plays a Wooded Foothills, cracking it and finding a basic mountain. He brings back out Scion, and then activates Scion to find and bin a Hellkite Tyrant. We then see a Dragon Lord Kolaghan join the party, and before letting the remaining mana fade, Matt pumps the Overlord twice, and then swings Scion and the Overlord at Mike. Not wanting to lose his commander to the Hellkite Tyrant / Scion trigger, Mike uses Reality Shift to exile Matt's commander. Mike then takes the hit and drops to 8. Trevor plays a Swamp, and Matt remembers to manifest his top card. Trevor drops Athalia's Lancers, and goes to tutor for a legendary card. He puts to hand a Gisela, and gears up the Lancers with some swords. Mike draws, and passes through his phases, gaining a 2/1 mirror token at the beginning of his combat phase, and then passing to Scion. Scion pays 3 in his main phase from Machias the Lunarch, having it come in with 2 +1/+1 counters, and giving it another one with the Unicorn's trigger. He also draws from the Beast Whisperer. We then see a Longshot squad drawing from the cast and putting a +1/+1 counter on it from the Unicorn. Scion then plays a Plains and realizes the Experiment 1 should have evolved, and does so before passing to Matt. Matt brings in Scion again and moves the Greaves to his commander. He then taps a land to activate Scion and puts to his graveyard an Udvara Hellkite and transforms the Scion into it. He still has 1 mana floating, and he pumps the Overlord again. Matt swings the Scion at Mike, and the rest at Scion, gaining 3 Udvara Hellkite triggers upon attacking, and making 3 dragon tokens. Responding to the Udvara triggers, Scion pieces out with a Teperi's Protection, and Mike then takes the hit and drops to 1, and Matt makes his tokens and passes. Trevor plays a Gisela in his main phase, and heads to combat, swinging the Lancers at Matt. Matt is quick to block with his colorless Manifest token to stop the hit, and Trevor then moves the Swords of Sinew and Steel to Gisela before passing to Mike. Mike puts to stack From the Ashes in his main phase, which is definitely an anti-Trevor card because he knows how much Trevor loves his non-basic lands. The board then blows up all non-basics and find that many basics, but Matt uses Scion twice before losing his lands. This time he puts a Dragon Tyrant and a Steel Hellkite into his yard, with Trevor sadly only being able to find 6 basics to replace his 7 destroyed lands. Mike then drops Kiki Jiki, a fair card I'm told, and he heads to combat, making another mirror token and passing to Scion. Scion phases back in on his turn and pays 6 for an Enduring Scale Lord. It gets a counter from entering because of his Unicorn. And he then taps Machias, removing a counter to put 1 into each of his other creatures. This in turn gives the Enduring Scale Lord 5 more counters. Still in his main phase, Scion puts to stack an Unbreakable formation, keeping his creatures indestructible, and because it's his main phase, gets to put a +1/+1 counter on all of his creatures, and they gain Vigilance. This resolves, and the Scale Lord gains another 6 counters on top of that afterwards. He then heads to combat, and swings everything at Trevor. Trevor blocks Chalet, and takes 20, which is halved, only dealing a total of 10. Scion passes, suggesting to Matt to swing at Trevor, and at the end of turn, Matt activates Scion to bin Scourge of Alkis and a Balefire Dragon. Matt activates Scion again in his main phase, just dumpstering dragons like they're going out of style. He finds and puts to graveyard a Tarka, World Renderer, and Matt then casts Skyshroud Claim. He finds a Breeding Pool and a Forest, taking 2 from the Breeding Pool to have it come in untapped. He then brings out Nicol Bolas in his main phase, and moving to combat, the Dragon team heads at Trevor. After a quick count-up, Trevor's dead either way, but he decides to block Dragon Lord Kolaghan on the way out. Mike draws and moves to combat, gaining a mirror token, but with nothing to play, passes. Scion untaps, and with his beefy board, pretty much has the game locked up after Matt realizes he should have swung a bit differently. Scion then resolves a Patron of Valiant, putting another +1/+1 counter onto all creatures that have one, and this adds a ton more counters to the Scale Lord. The Patron also gets a counter from the Unicorn, and at this point I'm having trouble keeping track of all these triggers. Scion then plays a Tuskguard Captain, giving all creatures with +1/+1 counters trample, which Matt counters with a counterspell. Mikaeus then gets tapped to put more counters out, and the Scale Lord gets even more ridiculously large, and all that's left for Scion to do at this point is swing out to finish the game. Game review time. So I think there might have been a chance for Matt to win this one during the last turn where he attacked and took out Trevor. I think he may have overcommitted what he needed to swing at him, especially considering a Tarka World Render gives all of his dragons double strike, and that effectively negates Gisela. He could have swung a dragon or two at Scion and probably taken him out, and then had to only deal with Mike, who is at 1 life and not really a threat. I think Sean's Chorus deck just goes to show that you don't need a flashy combo to win an EDH, just a bunch of big creatures, and a lot of synergy. Mike's Brudiclad deck was fantastic, but I think it's probably closer to a polymorph deck than anything. I like the randomness of polymorph, and this was a pretty fun game to showcase it. I've seen Trevor's Zurgo deck do very well or very poorly, and this was actually kind of in the middle somewhere. Unfortunately, it seemed like he was never able to establish much of a board state, having to play the bad guy and board wipe and get rid of his own creatures. Even though he had all that great equipment, it seemed like he couldn't establish a creature for more than 1 turn, and that really set him back. Please be sure to tune in every Monday and Thursday at 11 AM Eastern Standard Time for a guaranteed new video. You can also follow me on Twitter at MTGMudsta. You can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/MTGMudsta. And lastly, you can check me out when I stream at twitch.tv/MTGMudsta. This video is brought to you in support by my patrons. If you're looking for a way to help out the channel, please be sure to visit the link below. Thank you all for watching this video, and don't forget, friends are just opponents you haven't eliminated yet.